12 years anyway. We're going to have 8 years of it being the exact same thing. You have to know what you're doing for that to happen, and your school board, being advised by Baird and other financial professionals, has been able to do that already for 4 years and promising to do it for another 4. So hoping that that helps you develop trust in your board, because that doesn't just happen. That's planned. That's them saying, we have an acceptable amount, we're going to do what's right. So as a matter of fact, a little piece of information that I would share with you is that in keeping that mill rate stable last year and this year, they have actually paid off a giant chunk of debt. They're paying off over $3 million worth of debt last year and this year, and part of that will include then the interest on that debt. So the total that they're paying off in 2 years is closer to $10 million. That's huge. I don't know of another district in the state that's able to do that and function that way. And that is a good plan by the board, keeping that mill rate stable, paying off your debt in the future. Someone said to me, well, how many years sooner is it paid off? It's not working quite that way because we have debt spread out over the next 20 years, and it's spread on the different loans that are out there. But your loan amounts are less, but none of them are gone yet. Might be a few of them paid off when we meet this spring. I think there's 3 of them we may finish off, and then I might be able to say to you, this is the amount. I can tell you this: when I did the mill rate, I did the revenue limit worksheet this spring, this summer for this year's budget. I was even caught off guard by how much lower our debt payment was. It was $200,000 less this year than last year because of the interest that we paid off. You can follow that. Our debt payment was 1.9. This year, when I put it in the system, it was 1.7. The reason it was lower is because the debt that we paid off, no longer, that interest isn't accumulating. In itself. Think about that. In 5 years, that's $1 million right there by good use of your funds. So I'm impressed with the board. As I walked in, that plan was in place, and we followed through on it, and they're going to continue to use your money the wisest way they can, because they all live here, and they want the debt paid off also, and everybody likes their mill rate to be stable. So where is the $3 million going to go? First thing I want you to know is we're not adding anything new. This isn't to add a program or a building or a person or anything. This is to maintain the quality experience that we have right now. We have a lot of good stuff going on. We want to maintain that. And so why is it $3 million? We have a negative budget, and in order to get back to positive, we have to have X dollars, and we want to build our fund balance back up. The value in a fund balance is that you then don't have loans to make your payments. Right now, we're having to pay interest on loans that we make to make our ends meet. If we can get our fund balance back up to $1 million, $1.5 million, in that acceptable range of 20% of our total budget, our hope then is that we don't have to take a loan out annually to make ends meet. Why is there a loan? The state gives you your money at a couple times during the year, and they don't pay you monthly and keep your balance. They give you a hunk of money, then 6 months later they give you a hunk of money. They tell you to survive from one spot to the next. Most districts rely on their fund balance during that gap, or they take a loan. Used to be a lot more districts that were taking loans, and I think that there's been a conscious effort to not loan money in school districts anymore. I have shared with you a couple of documents that we are the most proud of, simplified. This was the mill rate one. The second document that I would share with you is our tax impact grid. The tax impact grid shows you that we are not going to we're not asking for more money next year than we got this year. We're just asking to be able to use it differently, right? If you follow this chart, colored chart, we're going to ask for the same amount. The mill rate is not going to change, but we want to be able to use that money for operational expenses that right now we use for debt. Okay? I earlier told you that we paid off more debt than our bill was. We advanced paid on a bunch of debt. So we're going to continue to do that if we have excess funds. But eventually we won't have excess funds because of the aid that we're losing annually because of our property values. So right now, the message is same amount of money, using it from one pot to the other to operate. I don't know, anybody have questions on any of that? Yeah.
Yes, why do you have to ask permission of the voters when you're using exactly the same amount of money?
It's an excellent question. Could you hear it, Brett? Could you hear his question? Want to ask that again? Thank you.
Why do you have to ask the voters for permission when you are using exactly the same amount of money?
It's an excellent question. Thank you for asking that. The state is set up that way. There's a revenue limit, and that is your operating expenses. And then you've gone to referendum to pay debt. When you went to referendum, you asked them specifically for that money for buildings or for the parking lot or whatever it was. So you don't have permission to spend that on heat or a roof. You have permission to spend it on what you asked the public to spend it on. Now we're asking the public to trust us to spend it on operating expenses to manage their money the best that we can. That is, the law is exactly set that way. And I do not get political, but I believe that our current legislators want it that way. They want it to be local control of your tax dollars, and then you put it out to the public, and the public decides. And so we're putting it out to the public, asking for the public to support all the good things that we have going on right now in the same fashion that we have them going on, with the same amount of money on your tax bill, same mill rate on your tax bill. So those two charts. Anyone have any questions on these graphs, grids? We feel like those are our bread and butter. Showing you we're not raising your mill rate, and the amount of money is the same by the grid. All right? Yeah.
Thank you. So you said we paid some debt in advance recently, is that right?
Yes.
And you said that, do we annually take out a loan because of operating expenses, is that right?
Yes.
So we annually have to take out a new loan for operating expenses, but we rushed other debt. Why did we not, instead of rushing that debt, hang on to that difference for this very thing, the increase of operating expenses? Did I word that well?
You did exactly. You did exactly. And that's the exact same question that I think he asked in a different fashion. We can't mix the pots. We can't mix the pots without permission, and that's what we're asking. We're asking for you to allow us to spend this money in operating. This money in operating. Right now we can't. So
within the confines of what we have already, so you already have, I guess, the permission to, if you will, rush debt if we can.
yes.
So that you already possess, so if you can, you do it. You don't have this permission quite yet, and that's what you're seeking.
100% right. We have permission to rush debt, which we are doing by keeping the mill rate stable. So the board would not advance paying debt if it raised your mill rate. That would be a bad decision in their minds. And so they're saying, we'll pay as much extra as you can pay and keep the mill rate the same. So we don't know the amount. We're not saying we're going to pay $2.5 million. We're saying pay the amount to the mill rate. It's kind of unique how you can fill that revenue limit worksheet that way. But we can't spend that on operating.
And these are things we're tied down by state statute and things of that sort?
Okay. Absolutely correct. Yeah.
And if I may, one more. Have we run the numbers, because if you pay off debt faster, you save money on interest. Has the school district ran the numbers on, let's say per adventure, we go these 4 years with $3 million more a year in operating expenses, that's $12 million. has the school district ran the numbers to see the difference in debt savings versus doing this and not doing this? Did I word that well?
So if we didn't put into operating and we kept using this money to pay down debt,
Yes. What is the difference in interest savings on our debt implementing this versus holding the course where we're at now?
my guess,
Have those numbers been considered and looked at and ran at all?
yes.
Because you know when we have our
Yeah.
mortgage at home, if we
Yep.
pay off our principal faster, we save
Yeah.
interest, quite
Yep.
a bit. I'd like to expect the school district did the same things in this scenario, one way or the other.
So what we've used is what's called a Baird forecast model. And that forecast model shows us you gotta put some numbers into it. You gotta put into it the number of students, what you think the property values are gonna go up, and a number of other variables. And then it can spit out for us what amount of money we need to function. So the question you have is, if we didn't move this to operating and we just kept advance paying on debt, what would the interest savings be? In 4 years, I would estimate that to be a couple $1 million. I don't know the exact number. Here's why I don't know yeah, no.
I'm just wondering if the school district considered it. Like, is that one of the figures that was looked at?
Well, here's the piece that you'll get to at the end of our presentation. We're unable to cut our way out of this budget. So even if we wanted to pay more debt, we got to somehow come up with more operating money or cut ourselves to a unattractive level that could have other ramifications. That's the worry. So we might end up paying more debt, but at some point we got to have more money to operate. We're just not able to function as a school district like 80-some% of the districts in the state. We're not able to function without additional operating money at some point in some fashion. So I could figure that out for you. I just don't have it by hand. We haven't done that. Here's the other piece that. Well, here's the piece that we haven't talked about. We have a annual loss of aid in our district, meaning that every year the state's going to give us less money for the next 3 or 4 years. Part of that is the reason that the mill rate has been kept stable, is we don't know where that's going to land. We don't know where we're going to be when they say this is your aid for the next 4 years because of the TIF falling off. The TIF fell off and it raised our property values so excessively that the state is taking that as a signal that we're a wealthy district. Hence, they give us less aid, which means we got to get more from the taxpayers. That's what created that gap in the first place. So we don't know where that's going to land eventually. What we know is that we can, but if it's in operating by not taking it all if we need to in the end. It's more confusing than I want to get with that, but it's a good question you ask. Yeah. We've not taken it that far. Yep. That's a good point by Dwayne. So in selecting which loans to pay off, we paid off what at the time were the high interest loans in the 3.5% to 4%. So the vast majority of our loans, well, I don't think we have any 4% left. They're all 3%. So the savings won't be dollar for dollar savings like we've saved these 2 years because the loans we're paying off are at such a lower rate. That makes sense? So I don't know how to break that down, but if you have a $2 million loan and one's 4%, one's 2%, yeah. So that's an option. Certainly the board could do that, but the board has the inside knowledge of the fact that we can't survive this way as a district. So I don't know if any of you have seen on our yeah. Yeah, you want to give her a microphone there? Or? So what she's saying is, I don't know if you'll be able to hear, I'll repeat the question. She's saying that the board's plan is to keep the mill rate stable, and if we're able to function and not need these operating dollars, to continue to pay off some debt. Matter of fact, our plan is to pay off more debt the first year. The first year we'll still have a gap of, what was it, about 500,000 that we'll use to pay off debt. So our plan is to continue down the road of getting rid of our debt while that gap closes from the aid.
So would it be fair to call this more flexibility?
Yeah. We like to use the term local control. We want the voters to give the board the local control of how to spend that money within the amount that they're going to levy. Not planning on raising the levy, not planning on adding any programs that cost anything, operating as we are, status quo, but using some of the money that we've used for debt in operating. Did I sound right, board members? So on the side of why do we need this money? I hinted at it a little bit already, but when the revenue limits went into place, 1993, I actually visited with the guy who signed the bill the other night. This was supposed to be inflationary increases annually. So your revenue limit was supposed to be tied to inflation, and then your school had to stay within their budget, but they got inflationary increases every year. For some reason, maybe a year that tax collections were low, they quit giving that amount. And so we have a graph on our page, maybe that's a sheet we should hand out, that shows that if the state would have continued to give the inflationary increases, our per student spending would be $3,300 more per kid. So if all they would have done was given inflationary raises since the start of 1993, we would have $3,300 more per kid, $2.4 million more in our budget annually. We would not have to go to the public for any money. We would not be asking for an operating referendum if our people in charge would have just stayed the course of inflationary increases. It's pretty simple. The system was set up and it was set up to work, but just like anybody else, when times were tough, they made some cuts, and then maybe that became a norm. I don't know. I don't understand that because I mean I don't know how we were supposed to survive without increases. The last thing I would close with is I think I already hinted at this. We cannot cut our way out of this problem. We've talked about it as a board. We've talked about it as an administrative team. We could make some cuts. If this referendum fails, there'll be some cuts made. But we will never cut our way out of this problem. For 2 years in a row, we got no new money. During those 2 years, it was historic inflationary times. We all lived through that, okay? My daughter is a date checker at the grocery store. They are changing items at the grocery store all the time. Fruit Loops no longer are a 15-ounce box. They're 13.2. And the price is the same. It's like a little smoke and mirrors. You're not getting as much for your dollar. We all know that. We all grocery shop. We all know that things are costing more. So for 2 years, while everything went up like crazy, we got no new money across the state. What was there, 60-some went to operating referendum last year, Neil? 99 went last year, and there's about 60 going this year. 91 total referendums going. Over 80, well, as of last year, 80% of the districts in the state have already done what we're doing right now. Our neighbors, Jefferson and Fort, are doing it right now in the spring, the same as us. So it's not a mismanagement. It's not we're trying to do something glossy. It's just the facts of school finance right now. So that's the good and the bad, or the miseries with company, is that districts are having to do this. Most districts have done it multiple times already. I think Appleton's gone 4 times for operating. They go for 3 years and then they renew it and renew it and renew it. So it's become, in some communities, a norm that they do a new referendum every 3 or 4 years. We're hoping to not have that. Our board's goal is to do this one time, get it passed, stabilize ourselves. Indications of our student enrollment are that that's going to work. We're a little bit up each of the last 4 enrollment checks. So we're kind of getting our enrollment back to where we were before COVID. We hope to get back to that spot soon. And I also think that our community is growing, and that is the number one way to get out of this cycle is to get more kids. Because kids, the increase in kids increases your revenue. So I would just close by saying that our election is the 2nd. We really are backed into a corner where if the referendum fails, we're going to have to do some things that are not fun for anyone and come back to referendum. So, any questions? None? Anyone have any more comments? Neil, Dwayne, Mel? Board members? Natasha?
I love the question that you asked about paying down your mortgage earlier. That was perfect. So the problem that we have right now is that we can't pay our grocery bill. So it hasn't been a matter so much of how much faster do we pay down our mortgage to save the interest there when we can't pay the groceries.
So our biggest operating expense is the kitchen. Sorry. So the kitchen expenses.
No, not groceries, just the household example.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, that could have worked because we have
yes.
food here, so I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yes, what she's saying is, well, I don't know. She said it fine. You understand our logic? Because it makes no sense. It's the same as you said. Well, you got enough money. Why are you going to referendum? We need permission. We need permission to spend it on operating. That's really what we want, local control of the tax dollars so that we can function like we're functioning because we're proud of what we're doing. Anyone else? I think you're fine. Good. Anyone else? I think we'll close then. Thank you for coming tonight. We've got a lot of opportunities. Tell everybody you know there's a lot of opportunities to meet. What's our next one? Tomorrow night. That'll be for our music parents. A little piece. Keep looking at the website. We've got a lot of other opportunities coming. Thank you.